The book of Revelation does not mention a 7-year tribulation. So where do Christians get the idea of a 7-year tribulation? Daniel 9 is where it all began. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, observed in the books the number of the years which was revealed as the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet for the completion of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. Daniel 9 begins with the prophet Daniel understanding Jeremiah's prophecy of the 70 years is coming to an end. Daniel prayed for Israel, acknowledging the nation's sins against God and asking for God's mercy, not to delay the return of the Israelites back to their land. As Daniel prayed, the angel Gabriel appeared to him and gave him a vision of Israel's future. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city. This is God's calendar of 70 weeks for Daniel's people, the Jews, and the holy city, Jerusalem. The angel Gabriel announced God's purposes for Israel in these 70 weeks. 70 weeks, or 77s, have been decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish the wrongdoing, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. The third purpose of the prophecy, to make atonement for iniquity, seems to be a picture of Christ's death on the cross. 1 John chapter 2 verse 2. He is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, and not only for ours, but also for the sins of the whole world. The fourth purpose goes further than dealing with sin to bring in everlasting righteousness. It is difficult to interpret these 6 purposes to be accomplished in the 70 weeks because the text does not explain them. It simply lists them. So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with streets and moat, even in times of distress. Then, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and his end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined. And he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate, until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. In verse 24, Gabriel says 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city. The prophecy goes on to divide the 70 weeks into 3 smaller units, 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and 1 week. Daniel was reading Jeremiah's prophecy of 70 years. And if Gabriel's message on the 70 weeks play on Jeremiah's 70 years, then the 70 weeks should be understood as 70 weeks of years. In other words, a period of 70 times 7 years, or 490 years. From the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The start of the 70 weeks prophecy is the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Artaxerxes, king of Persia, made a decree granting Nehemiah permission, safe passage, and supplies to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the city and the walls in 444 BC. From the command to rebuild Jerusalem to the appearance of the Messiah is 7 plus 62 weeks. Most commentators agree that the 70 sevens should be understood as 70 weeks of years. 7 plus 62 weeks equal to 69 weeks. 69 weeks times 7 is 483 years. The Jewish calendar is based on a lunar year of 12 months, with each month lasting 30 days each, or 360 days in a lunar year. 483 prophetic years times 360 days equal 173,880 days. Making provision for a leap year every 4 years, we divide 173,880 days by 365.25. We have 476 solar years. A leap year has 366 days. 476 years after 444 BC places us at AD 33, which would coincide with Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem. Matthew 21, verse 1 to 9. 476 minus 444 equal to 32, plus 1, since there is no 0 year as we go from 1 BC to 1 AD. Then, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Most Christian interpreters have taken the cutting off of the Messiah as a reference to the crucifixion of Christ. He had nothing, in the sense that he did not receive the Messianic kingdom. Daniel 9:26 continues with a prediction that after the Messiah is killed, the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. This was fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 by the Roman army under Titus, the son of the then Roman emperor. Who is this future prince? Yes, Titus was the prince of the Romans who destroyed Jerusalem, but he was a type of the future prince who made a covenant with Israel. Titus did not do that. The prince who is to come is a reference to the Antichrist, who have some connection with Rome, since it was the Romans who destroyed Jerusalem. The prophecy says that after the 62 weeks, the Messiah was cut off and have nothing. About 6 days after Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem, he was crucified on a cross. So that part of the prophecy was fulfilled precisely. This prince who is to come was supposed to destroy the city and the temple within the last week of the prophecy in the next 7 years. Did that happen? No. Nothing happened once the Messiah was cut off. And about 40 years later, note, 40 years later, that Titus and the Roman army came in and destroyed Jerusalem. Historical events do not fit into prophecy. That's the reason many commentators hold the view that there is a gap, a pause, between the 69 weeks and the last week of the prophecy. Daniel 9:27. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. The 70th week does not start until the signing of a covenant, a treaty. He, the prince that is to come, the Antichrist, will sign a treaty with the many, that is, the Jews. The 70 weeks prophecy has to do with the Jews, Daniel's people. But in the middle, the Antichrist will break the treaty after 3.5 years and put a stop to sacrifices. On the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. The NIV translated it this way, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation. The New Living Translation. And as a climax to all his terrible deeds, he will set up a sacrilegious object that causes desecration. In other words, he will desecrate the temple by setting himself up as God. Matthew 24 verse 15, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4. The end event of the 70 weeks of Daniel is the destruction of the desolator, the one who makes desolate. And this coincides with the second advent of Jesus Christ to the earth. From the decree to rebuke Jerusalem to the Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, a total of 69 weeks. After the 62 weeks, but not during the 70th, the Messiah will be cut off and the city and the sanctuary will be destroyed. There is a gap between the 69 weeks and the last week of Daniel's prophecy. This is the church age. In the beginning of the last week, a covenant will be made between the Antichrist and Israel. But in the middle of that week, the Antichrist will put a stop to the sacrifices. Many interpreters associate Daniel's 70th week with the 7 years of tribulation during the end times. The book of Revelation mentions 3.5 years in different ways. In Revelation 13:5, a mouth was given to him, that is the beast from the sea, speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. Revelation chapter 12 verse 6, then the woman fled into the wilderness, so that there she would be nourished for 1,260 days. 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness, where she was nourished for a time, times, and half a time away from the presence of the serpent. John was told in Revelation 11 verse 2, leave out the courtyard which is outside the temple and do not measure it, because it has been given to the nation, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. Verse 3, and I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. It is on Daniel's 70th week timeline that interpreters try to place the events in the book of Revelation. The key question is, in which half do these different events fall?